Why Qyburn betrayed Grand Maester Pycelle before Cersei's Wildfire plan. Welcome to the channel. Subscribe if you love House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, and deep dives into Westerosi lore. Let's begin. The final days before the explosion. The Great Sept of Baelor stood at the heart of King's Landing, a monument to the faith of the Seven, a symbol of power, and the site of countless political games over the decades. But in the final days before it was reduced to rubble and green fire, the city was already trembling under the weight of schemes, betrayals, and the kind of ruthless maneuvering that made the capital infamous. And in the shadows of these events stood a man few truly understood, Qyburn. By the time Cersei Lannister's infamous Wildfire plan was set in motion, Qyburn had already removed one of the oldest political figures in the city from the game, Grand Maester Pycelle. But here's the question. Why did Qyburn betray Pycelle? Was it just an order from Cersei? Was it revenge? Opportunism? Or part of a much deeper, much darker plan? This is the story of an exiled maester with questionable ethics, an aging political survivor, and the kind of betrayal that set the stage for one of the deadliest days in Westeros history. Who was Qyburn, really? Before we talk about the betrayal, we need to understand the man who carried it out. Qyburn was not your average maester. In fact, he was not even a maester at all. Not anymore. Once a learned man of the Citadel, Qyburn had been stripped of his chain for performing experiments that went against the ethical code of the Order. Whispered rumors spoke of human experimentation, of cutting into living flesh in the name of knowledge. But where other men saw horror, Qyburn saw opportunity. His exile did not ruin him. It freed him. When we first meet him in the series, he's tending to Ser Gregor Clegane's horrific wounds after his duel with Oberyn Martell. While other healers declared the mountain doomed, Qyburn spoke calmly of a way to save him, a way that led to the creation of the silent, monstrous figure later known as Ser Robert Strong. Qyburn's real skill was not just in medicine or forbidden science. It was in understanding power. He could sense the shifting winds of influence in King's Landing and always placed himself next to the person who stood to gain the most. And in the final days of Pycelle's life, that person was Cersei Lannister, the long game of Grand Maester Pycelle. Now, Pycelle is often dismissed as a doddering old fool, slow, weak, and eager to please whoever sat the Iron Throne. But that's only half the truth. Pycelle was a survivor. He served under multiple kings, Aerys II, Robert Baratheon, Joffrey Baratheon, Tommen Baratheon. Each reign had its own dangers, yet Pycelle remained his post as Grand Maester for decades. Behind the beard-stroking and the hunched walk, Pycelle was a political creature. He pretended to be harmless because harmless men don't get stabbed in the back in King's Landing. But Pycelle wasn't harmless. He was loyal to the Lannisters, or more specifically to Tywin Lannister. Tywin trusted Pycelle to maintain the balance of power in the Red Keep and keep the council functioning in his favor. But after Tywin's death, Pycelle's position became far more dangerous. Without the shield of the hand, he was just another aging advisor trying to stay relevant. And that's where Qyburn saw his chance. The clash between old order and new. Pycelle represented the old order. The traditions of the Citadel, the authority of the Grand Maester's chain, the slow-moving diplomacy of the small council. Qyburn represented the new order, unbound by ethics, loyal only to results, willing to do whatever was necessary to achieve his patron's goals. From the moment Qyburn replaced Pycelle as Cersei's trusted advisor in matters of science and strategy, the writing was on the wall. Pycelle didn't just lose influence. He became a liability. Pycelle still held some sway in the council, particularly with Kevan Lannister, who had taken over as Hand of the King. Kevan was trying to bring stability back to King's Landing, to curb Cersei's recklessness and limit Qyburn's influence. This made Pycelle a natural ally for Kevan and a natural enemy for Cersei's new pet advisor. For Qyburn, keeping Pycelle alive meant allowing an old, loyalist voice to keep whispering in the ear of Cersei's enemies. That simply wouldn't do. The final days. By the time Cersei was preparing her Wildfire plot to destroy the Great Sept, The pieces were already being moved. The Faith Militant had grown dangerously powerful. The High Sparrow had humiliated Cersei in front of the realm. Tommen was firmly under the High Sparrow's influence. Kevan and Pycelle were working to sideline Cersei entirely from the capital's politics. Qyburn knew that for Cersei's plan to succeed, for her to wipe out all her enemies in one fiery blast, she needed total freedom of action. That meant removing every obstacle that could warn Tommen or counteract the plan. Pycelle was one such obstacle. If Pycelle remained alive, he might discover the wildfire caches beneath the September. He might appeal to Tommen, or Kevan, or the City Watch to stop Cersei's trial by destruction. And even if he couldn't stop her, he could at least make trouble. Qyburn was not a man who left loose ends. The betrayal. On the morning of the trial, Qyburn lured Pycelle into his chambers. His voice was calm, polite, almost warm. He told Pycelle that the Queen Mother wanted to see him. But when the old man arrived, he was met not with Cersei, but with a group of Qyburn's little birds. These were not the whispering children that Varys once used for intelligence. Under Qyburn's care, the little birds had been turned into something far more dangerous, assassins as well as spies. What followed was one of the most chilling deaths in Game of Thrones. Pycelle, startled and confused, tried to talk his way out, but the children closed in, knives in hand, and Qyburn stood there, almost apologetic, as the Grand Maester of Westeros was stabbed again and again. This was not just murder, it was symbolic execution. The old order literally stabbed to death by the new. Motives behind the murder. So, why did Qyburn betray Pycelle? The answer is layered. 1. Cersei's orders. First and foremost, Qyburn served Cersei. Removing Pycelle was part of clearing the board for her wildfire plot. Cersei needed absolute control on that day, with no council interference. 2. Personal ambition. With Pycelle gone, Qyburn became the sole voice whispering in Cersei's ear. No other maesters, no dissent, just his influence over the most dangerous woman in King's Landing. 3. Ideological clash. Qyburn had been cast out by the Citadel, while Pycelle represented the Citadel's authority. Killing Pycelle was, in a way, Qyburn's revenge against the institution that had rejected him. For practicality, Pycelle was a risk. He was loyal to Kevan and the Lannisters' traditional power base, not to Cersei. If he had caught wind of the wildfire, he might have stopped it. Eliminating him removed that risk entirely. Pycelle's death was overshadowed by the explosion of the Great September. Hundreds died in green fire, including Kevan Lannister, the Tyrells, the High Sparrow, and the Faith Militant leadership. But in a strange way, Qyburn's murder of Pycelle was just as crucial to Cersei's success. Without Pycelle there to warn anyone, the plan proceeded flawlessly. By the end of the day, Cersei Lannister was Queen of the Seven Kingdoms.